Hello, you're welcome to my channel. This is where we give you information as it has to do with the Nigerian society. Apart from the fact that Mass Media NG, dwells on mass media communication on the society, we'll still give you general information that has to do with the education sector, and then random news from the society. We analyze them here and then talk about how they relate to the society, and then we say how things can be better going forward. Now we have an issue we want to discuss today, and that has to do with the education sector, and it has to do with lecturers in Nigerian universities and polytechnics, of course, going on IT. The need for lecturers to be embarking on IT. We're talking about industrial training here. Students go on industrial training. That's where they have experience in the field. That is where they acquaint themselves with things that happen in the field, trying to match the field with the classroom experience. So from time to time they go on IT. For instance, in mass communication, department, they go on IT twice a year. I mean, for the first degree program, second year and third year, they go on IT. They check the industry. They could be in the newspaper house, they could be working for broadcast houses, they could work in PR firms, advert firms, just to have an experience of how it's done in the field. Same applies to polytechnics. They go for months, and then some other departments do IT for students. But we are saying that there is need for lecturers themselves to embark on IT. The basic qualification for being a lecturer in Nigeria is the first degree and then the second degree. That is, if you have a master's in a particular field and then you have a first degree in that field, you become a lecturer. Whether you have experience in teaching or not, you become a lecturer, and then you start with assistant lecturer, or if you have a PhD, you start with lecturer 2 in most universities. But the fact is that you have no practical experience about what that course is all about in the field. And most times we train students not for them to come out and be lecturers. We train them to go into the field and practice. And then you're teaching people what you have not experienced. You don't even know how it applies in the field. Check, for instance, in the private sector. This happens mostly in the private sector. You find companies that when you want to work there, they will say 5 years experience, 3 years experience. We quarrel with that, but the companies know what they want. They want you to give them the knowledge of what you have gotten before you come into their field. Let them have that practical knowledge, so that when you come in, they won't spend so much money on in-service training, or when they are doing in-service training, they'll be sure that you are in line with what they are teaching. Of course, some persons still go into the industry without actually having experience, but there's in-service training. The research you do to get published for in journals, research you do for seminar papers, most of the things you do, they are not transferable in terms of classroom teaching. Yes, they are not. You may say it's false, but of course in research courses they may apply. But if you go and do research and then get published in a journal, what you have done there cannot be translated to how to do a particular thing. For instance, you do a study on for mass communication, influence of billboard advertisements on purchase of products, and then after the study you make your findings. It doesn't teach you how billboards operate. It doesn't teach you how to run a billboard industry, or run a billboard service firm, or an outdoor advertising firm. Or you say influence of advertising, exposure to radio advertising and its influence on patronage of noodles. That has not taught somebody how to produce a radio script, an advert script, produce an advert, a radio advert, or even do online advertising. We're saying that if you go on IT, maybe you go and practice journalism, or you go to a radio TV, a radio house, or you go to an advert firm, you will see how things are done, and then you check whether what you teach is still in line with what's happening outside. Not just mass com, whether it's economics, whether it's sociology, psychology, microbiology. There is need for the lecturer to be going on IT, to acquaint yourself with what is happening. Things change. The way the society is these days, I mean, the world is today. What happened last year, takes a totally different shape after about just a few months. How it was done for last 5 years is no longer, in fact, largely no longer how it's done today. So that you got employment 5 years ago as a senior, as an assistant lecturer, or even with your PhD, lecturer 2, and you never practiced. Most of the things you'll be teaching, depending on the course you're teaching, You are teaching them what you learned from books. Is that how it's going to be practiced? It means that when the students are leaving, what you have taught them will have nothing to do with what is happening outside. What I'm talking about is totally different from research activities. That you see, in lecturing, we get promoted largely based on what we do outside the classroom and not inside the classroom. What do I mean by that? The books you write, the papers you publish, seminars you attend. These things are not classroom activities. Whereas abroad, of course, students rate lecturers. You may say that our society is not ready for that. Maybe you don't trust students to do a proper rating, but the fact is that even the students themselves in class, they rate lecturers based on their teaching, based on their contributions in class. They rate them. They participate in the promotion of the lecturer by rating you. So what you do in class matters a lot. So where you don't contribute to the students' progress, they know, they rate you. And the rating of students plays a very great role in the lecturer's retention as a staff of that particular school. So don't begin to say this thing is not Western world, they don't do IT and all those things. You can't rate yourself with the Western world. The gap is too much. We're saying that things are happening here, and that most times when students leave the classroom, they get into the industry, they don't know what to do. They begin to ask themselves, where am I coming from? You see, somebody studies linguistics and Igbo language and comes out and is wondering what he spent 4 years in school doing. He doesn't know what he's going to do. I have a friend who graduated 4 years ago. Until now, he's still asking me what's going to do. I know what he's going to do, but because maybe he wants to work in a place that he'll be paid, maybe every month he'll be paid, and then he'll be looking at the civil service sector and all those things. But how can you be on your own? I've talked about physical experience in IT, where you go and check whether what you teach in class is the same thing being done outside. What of the psychological experience? When you go on IT as a lecturer, maybe after 2 years or every 5 years, you go on IT, spend for a drop ego, spend for 4 months there, spend 3 months there. You now see how they are being paid in that sector. You now see how they work in that sector. You ask yourself, if my kid was in this class, would I want my kid to graduate and then come to this place and work and then be paid this way? And then you look at those who are working in where doing IT. Maybe they've worked for 10 years. You ask yourself, is this what I want my child to do? When you experience firsthand what happens in industry where you teach students to go into, psychologically, you may feel bad. You may have a pathetic experience, and then you come back to the classroom and change your perception of teaching. You begin to teach students on how they could be independent, not how they will go and work in those places. I taught mass communication for 15 years before leaving the system, and I know some of my students, in fact, particularly one of them, kept telling me, sir, that guy used to work for one of the leading newspapers in Nigeria, and then he was telling me, discourage people from coming here. Look at what we're being paid. If you don't do this, put your hand in this and that, you won't make it. Don't come here. Don't come here. You see, the experience is such that those that are even working in the newspaper industry, they are now running their own online platforms. They have these, some are bloggers, some are online newspaper owners. That you practice journalism before moving into lecturing is not enough for you not to begin to think of IT. Me, I was a crack reporter. I practiced journalism like 15 years ago. Before going into lecturing, I was a journalist and I was a crack reporter. I won awards as a journalist. But, funny aspect is that the time I practice is different from today. We didn't have computers like these online platforms now. You have Premium Times, you have the Cable NG. They were not there. And our own time was not a time where before you work for any platform these days, you need to know how to use a video camera or how to record with your phone. You record your own, you edit, you send, you are the reporter, you are the cameraman, you are everything. Those days, most universities have cameramen. Now listen, things change. What used to be 5 years ago, even 12 months ago, cannot be the same as what happens today. And that is why there is need for lecturers, whether it is university or polytechnic, to be going on IT, industrial training. You take time out. I'm not talking about sabbatical. I'm not talking about sabbatical. You go on IT, you get trained, you check the industry. For instance, banking and finance now, you check banks. You are teaching people. In fact, those I used to know when I got into lecturing like several years ago, 15 years plus before leaving the industry. When I got into lecturing, those that were bankers then, most of them have been sacked. Things are happening. So you are teaching people, to go into an industry that keeps sacking people. People have spent 17 years there and nothing. So, but if you go there, you do IT, you have such experience, you see people being sacked. Yes, you have your own job secured because you came for IT. that can change your perception of teaching. That can make you begin to teach people on how to be, independent, how they can exit from the industry when a particular time gets that. You give them exit strategy. How many years to spend in industry, what to do, whether there are independent ways of practicing their course. So these are the things that at times it makes students to feel frustrated when they are in school. Somebody finishes 4 years, goes into the industry, and what he has learned in school is totally different from what he sees outside. Then you're a lecturer, you're teaching certain courses, and then you don't even know where somebody that is in that course can go on IT. Then there's a problem. If you teaching a course, you cannot go on IT, you don't even know where they work. That is the basic place that somebody that finishes the course can work. Then there's a problem. It's not a question of everybody graduating and then coming back to be lecturers or going into the civil service. It's just something else somebody in that particular course can do on his own. These days, you can leverage on technology to even run your own channel where you discuss the things you learned. You can have a YouTube channel discussing your own course, treating people, having online clients and all those things. Do you even check out those places, or have you chosen to remain in the stone age because you think that yes, social media is for the young people, they are wasting time on this? And then you check. If you go on IT, you may come back and then check the notes that you're using and see that there's trouble. You've been deceiving people. So that's why I'm saying there is need for people to go on IT. Check our students that are traveling abroad for study. If you have, I have them. They travel, they call me, they weep because they're saying that the things that they are learning outside, most of them are having problem understanding. They are doing masters in a particular course and they're having problem understanding the things they are teaching because the things they learned in Nigeria are totally different from the things they are learning there. Yet they are the same courses or the similar courses. The only thing is that many Nigerians are brainy. So because of the way we study here, the hard way we studied here, you go there, you find them doing well, working on their own. But if it is for them to use what they have been taught here, there's a problem. You ask that question. Are you updating yourself? And how is that? Only for schools, management of schools, to make it mandatory for lecturers to be going on IT. That would be a very special thing. For instance, now the Academic Staff Union of Universities was on strike for like 8 months, and then eventually they came back, and then they're asking that they be paid for the months that the government didn't pay them. And then that's good. Government shouldn't punish them for embarking on strike. That's good. But I ask again, who pays the students for the 8 months they spent at home? Who does that? Nobody. The only way to pay them back is to be loaded. When you come back, you have learned some practical steps, and then when you are teaching in class, they will see fresh things. You learn it from industry. Yes, there was lockdown then, there was COVID and those things. But what I'm talking about is when you give them something that makes them want to come back, especially when they see that you went to the field to study and then you came back and then you're bringing practical things, that could give hope to the system. That will give hope to the system. But what operates now is a situation where, somebody says the education system is just like somebody saying, he wants to travel to Abuja, and then they've told him about Abuja, a very beautiful city, and then the person closes his eyes in the bus trying to travel to Abuja, and then after some time, he opens his eyes only to see himself at Nkwakozo. That's the impression. That's what happens from the first year in school to the final year, NYSC, and then you go into the field to discover that you ask yourself, what have I been doing in school since? That's what happens. But doing IT could be a way of solving this problem. At least it could be a first step to updating the system, and then those who are not supposed to be in the system can, get this experience and then do something. Try and update students with the latest trends in the society, how things work out there, and then psychological aspect that you experienced. You can begin to tell them how to survive in the industry based on the latest techniques, so that when they get into this industry and then they are going for interviews and apart from what they study on their own, they will be sure that what they learned in the classroom is actually close to what they are seeing outside. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now, if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe to my channel and then like and share this video. Then click on the notification button so that you'll be the first to get the next video. Thank you very much.